The studio lights burned hot, the air thick with the sort of silence that feels alive. Cameras were rolling, producers whispering through headsets, and 3 chairs sat beneath a banner that read Unfiltered Truth, Jasmine, Kirk, and Rasheeda. It was supposed to be a calm, sit-down talk about moving forward, but nothing about this reunion was calm. Not when Jasmine Cross finally broke her silence about those vacation photos while Rasheeda Frost sat just inches away. The world had already seen the pictures. Jasmine in a bright orange swimsuit, laughing beside Kirk on a boat somewhere in Turks and Caicos. The ocean behind them shimmered like glass, but the comments section was pure fire. "Is this a joke?" One fan wrote. "Rasheeda better say something." Another added, 4 weeks. Rumors spread faster than wildfire, and tonight, the truth, or at least, Jasmine's version of it, was about to spill live on national television. "People think they know what happened," Jasmine said, her voice trembling at first, but steadying with every word. "But they don't know me. They don't know what really went down on that trip." Across from her, Rasheeda folded her arms, her expression unreadable. Kirk sat between them, jaw tight, hands clasped, as though holding himself together by sheer will. The interviewer leaned forward. "Jasmine, are you saying there's more to the story?" Jasmine's lips curved into something between a smirk and a confession. "I'm saying what people think they saw isn't the whole truth." Gasps rippled through the live audience. Kirk's eyes darted toward Rasheeda, who still hadn't blinked. The tension in the room was so thick you could hear the cameras hum. Behind the scenes, the production team exchanged frantic looks. The control room director mouthed, "Keep rolling." Fans online were already typing in all caps, flooding comment sections with theories. Some believed Jasmine was telling the truth. Others said she was stirring up old wounds just for the spotlight. Either way, one thing was clear: nobody was ready for what came next. As Jasmine continued, her tone sharpened. "That trip wasn't what y'all think it was. Kirk wasn't sneaking around. He was trying to fix things. With me. With her. With everyone." The audience gasped again. Kirk's hand shot to his forehead, and Rasheeda finally turned toward Jasmine with a look that could cut glass. "Fix things," Rasheeda repeated slowly, her voice cold and deliberate. "By flying her out to paradise?" The crowd erupted in murmurs. Jasmine's confidence faltered, then returned like a storm gathering strength. "You can twist it how you want," she said, "but I know what was said on that beach, and so does he." For a split second, even Kirk seemed frozen, caught between 2 women whose names had trended together more times than most politicians. It wasn't just gossip anymore, it was personal history unraveling in real time. The host's voice trembled with excitement as she tried to rein things in. "So, Jasmine, are you saying Kirk and you?" Jasmine raised her hand. "I'm saying everything's about to come out tonight. All of it." And just like that, the audience went silent again. The air in the studio shifted, the lights felt hotter, and the drama everyone had waited years for was finally about to explode right there. Live, with Rasheeda sitting right next to the woman who once tore her marriage apart. Fans at home leaned forward on their couches, phones lighting up with notifications. The countdown to chaos had begun, and no one, not Kirk, not Rasheeda, not Jasmine, would leave that stage untouched. The silence after Jasmine's last words hung heavy, like a storm cloud that refused to move. Kirk leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, staring at the floor as if he could find an escape route in the pattern of the carpet. Rasheeda sat upright, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles turned pale, her eyes fixed on Jasmine with the kind of calm that hides fire. The cameras zoomed in, catching every twitch, every side glance, every flicker of emotion. The host tried to speak, but Jasmine wasn't finished. "You all wanted the truth," she said, her voice trembling between defiance and fear. "So here it is. That trip wasn't just a getaway, it was a confrontation." The audience gasped, a low ripple of disbelief moving across the studio. Kirk shifted uncomfortably, sweat glistening on his forehead under the bright lights. Rasheeda's lips parted slightly, not in surprise, but in something colder recognition. "What do you mean, a confrontation?" the host asked softly, leaning forward as though afraid to interrupt the tension. Jasmine looked directly into the camera, her eyes burning. "That trip was planned. Not by Kirk. By me." A wave of murmurs flooded the studio. Kirk's head snapped up, his face a picture of confusion and panic. "What are you talking about, Jasmine? You're making it sound like you didn't know." Jasmine cut in sharply. "Come on, Kirk. Don't act brand new. You got on that plane because I told you I had something to say that couldn't wait." Rasheeda let out a quiet laugh, short and bitter. "So you planned the whole thing. You planned to humiliate me again." The word again hit like a slap. Jasmine turned to her, and for a second her tough expression cracked. "No, I planned to end it. The audience leaned forward, drawn in by the gravity of her tone. And what? The host pressed. The cycle, Jasmine said. The hiding. The guilt. The whispers. I was tired of being the secret. I was tired of pretending it didn't hurt both of us. She looked at Rasheeda again. You think I don't know what I did to your family? I do. I live with that every day. Rasheeda's eyes softened just for a moment, then hardened again. So your big plan was to take him to the islands and make everything right, while the cameras caught you smiling in the sun. Those pictures weren't supposed to leak, Jasmine said quickly, her voice rising. You think I'd want that? I wasn't flaunting anything. I wanted closure. I wanted him to look me in the eye and tell me the truth. Kirk rubbed his temples. This is insane. Jasmine, we talked about moving past all that. Why are you twisting this? She shot him a look, so sharp it could cut through glass. Because you lied, Kirk. You said Rasheeda knew about the trip. You said she agreed. The audience collectively gasped. The host blinked, stunned. Rasheeda turned to Kirk, her expression unreadable. You told her that. Kirk hesitated, his mouth opening but no sound coming out. I didn't think she'd. You didn't think I'd what? Rasheeda interrupted, her voice shaking. Find out. See my husband's name trending with hers again? The studio was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. The tension felt alive, coiling around them like a snake. Jasmine looked ready to break, her bravado slipping into something raw. I only went because I thought she knew. I thought it was, maybe the start of something honest. Maybe I could finally move on if we just cleared the air. Rasheeda stood suddenly, her chair scraping against the floor. Move on. You had 10 years to move on, Jasmine. She shouted, her voice echoing off the walls. You broke my home, and you're still standing here acting like you were the victim. I'm not acting like anything, Jasmine snapped back. You think I didn't pay for it? I lost everything too. My name, my peace, my career. You lost what you chose to lose. Rasheeda shot back. You walked into my life like a tornado, and now you want sympathy. The host tried to step in. Ladies, let's just know, Jasmine said, voice firm. Let her talk. She's earned that. She took a breath. But so have I. Kirk stood then, raising his hands. Enough. This isn't helping anyone. But neither woman looked at him. You told me, Jasmine said, her voice trembling again, that you were done pretending. You said you wanted to live your truth. Those were your words. Kirk's face went red. I said that because I was trying to fix the mess, not make it worse. Rasheeda laughed bitterly. And how's that going for you? The crowd reacted with murmurs and a few scattered laughs. The kind of uncomfortable reaction that makes producers lean forward in their seats. The host cleared her throat. So, Jasmine, you're saying Kirk led you to believe Rasheeda was aware of this trip? That it wasn't a secret? Yes, Jasmine said. He called it a healing trip. Said we all needed closure. I thought maybe that was true. I thought maybe for once we were all on the same page. She turned her gaze toward Kirk. But you made a fool out of me again. The audience gasped again, louder this time. Kirk shook his head, muttering under his breath. But the microphones caught it anyway. You did that yourself. What? Jasmine shouted, her voice echoing through the studio. Rasheeda stepped forward. Don't, she said to Kirk. Don't you dare blame her. You started this. You kept it going. You lied to both of us. Her voice cracked on the last word, and suddenly the strength she'd been holding onto wavered. She turned away, brushing at her eyes. The cameras zoomed in. This was the moment every producer dreams of, the raw emotion, the vulnerability, the chaos. Jasmine's shoulders sagged. I didn't want to hurt her, she said softly. I just wanted peace. Peace, Rasheeda repeated, turning back with wet eyes. You don't get peace from pain. Not like that. Kirk exhaled heavily, running a hand through his hair. You both think this is about a vacation, but it's not. It's about years of us not letting go. Years of the internet deciding who we are. The host jumped in. Kirk, are you admitting there was still something between you and Jasmine before this trip? He hesitated, then said quietly, there were conversations. The crowd erupted. Fans screamed. Phones lit up. Somewhere, producers were already drafting tomorrow's headlines. Rasheeda stared at him, her voice trembling but cold. So after everything, you were still talking to her behind my back. It wasn't like that, Kirk said quickly. We were trying to make peace. You keep using that word, she snapped. You don't even know what it means. Jasmine looked down, whispering to herself. He said it was closure. He promised. And you believed him? Rasheeda asked. After everything. I wanted to, Jasmine said. I wanted to believe people could change. The host looked between them, sensing another wave of drama building. So what happened on that trip? What really happened after those photos? Jasmine took a long breath, as if bracing herself. He told me he loved us both. The audience screamed. Gasps filled the room. Kirk's face went pale. Rasheeda's jaw dropped open, eyes wide in disbelief. You're lying, Kirk said weakly. Am I? Jasmine whispered. You said it. You said, I wish I could fix both my worlds. Those were your exact words. The host's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God. The noise in the studio was overwhelming. Some audience members shouted, others covered their mouths. Kirk stood motionless, eyes wide, as if his own confession had been dragged out of him by force. Rasheeda stepped closer, her voice low and trembling. You said you loved me. Only me. I do, Kirk stammered. Rasheeda, then why were you on that beach telling her the same thing? The silence that followed felt like a collapse. Kirk had no answer. Jasmine wiped a tear from her cheek and whispered, because he doesn't know who he is, without the drama. Without both of us fighting over him. The host turned toward Kirk. Do you want to respond to that? But Kirk didn't speak. He just looked at the floor, breathing hard. Rasheeda shook her head. You're addicted to chaos, Kirk. And I'm done being your cure. She took off her microphone, tossed it on the table, and began walking off set. The audience gasped again, some shouting for her to stay. Producers moved frantically behind the scenes. Rasheeda, please, Kirk called out. Don't do this here. You did it here, she said without looking back. You've been doing it here for years. She disappeared through the curtain. The stage lights dimmed slightly, and the host's voice trembled as she spoke into her mic. We'll take a short break. But Jasmine leaned forward and said softly, no, let's not. They deserve to hear the rest. The host froze, eyes darting to the control booth. The director's voice crackled through the earpiece. Keep rolling. And as the screen faded to a slow close-up of Jasmine's tear-streaked face, her voice broke into a whisper that silenced even the audience. Because the truth isn't over yet. When the cameras came back on, the studio lights felt harsher, the silence deeper. Jasmine sat alone now, her posture tight, her eyes rimmed red. Kirk stood near the edge of the set, pacing like a man who'd lost his way. Producers whispered behind the cameras, their hands fluttering like nervous birds. But Jasmine didn't look at them. She stared straight into the lens, into the homes of millions watching live. You all saw what just happened, she said, her voice low and steady. She walked out. And honestly, I don't blame her. But this isn't just about me and her anymore. It's about what happens when you try to heal in public and the whole world keeps reopening your wounds. The host sat down slowly beside her, cautious now, like approaching a live wire. Jasmine, she said gently, people want to understand. You said Kirk told you he loved both of you. What did that mean to you? Jasmine took a deep breath. It meant confusion, pain, maybe even hope. I thought he meant we were all going to stop pretending. That we were finally going to face what happened without hiding, without shame. But then he looked me in the eyes and said, don't tell her. That's when I realized he hadn't changed at all. Kirk stopped pacing, his head snapping up. That's not true, he said loudly. You're twisting my words. She turned toward him, her voice sharp but tired. I don't have to twist anything. You twist everything yourself. The audience murmured, shifting in their seats. Kirk ran a hand over his face and muttered, this is getting out of hand. It's been out of hand for years, Jasmine shot back. You just liked it better when you were the one controlling the story. The host raised her hand slightly, trying to keep order. Kirk, you've heard her side. What do you want to say? He looked at Jasmine, then at the camera, his voice cracking. I made mistakes. I hurt people I love. But I didn't plan that trip to start anything. I was trying to end something that never should have begun. By lying? Jasmine asked. By bringing me there under false pretenses. By trying to make peace, Kirk said again, almost pleading. The audience let out a collective sigh, half disbelief, half frustration. Jasmine shook her head slowly. You keep saying that word like it means forgiveness. But peace isn't lying to everyone until they're too tired to fight back. Kirk stepped closer. You think you're innocent in all this. You went on that trip knowing what it would look like. You posted pictures. You wanted attention. Jasmine stood, her voice rising. I didn't post them. Someone else did. And don't you dare stand there acting like I'm the only one who fed the fire. You built your whole image on it. You love the drama. The word hung in the air like smoke. Kirk's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The audience gasped, sensing a truth heavier than either of them wanted to admit. You think I liked any of this? He asked finally, his voice shaking. Watching my family get torn apart, people online calling me a monster, a cheat, a joke. You didn't like it, Jasmine said quietly, but you didn't stop it either. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the faint buzz of the studio lights. Then, from the audience, Someone shouted, "Where's Rasheeda?" The host hesitated, pressing a finger to her earpiece. "We're being told Rasheeda has stepped backstage but is still in the building," she said carefully. "Good," Jasmine whispered, "because she deserves to hear the rest too." The host turned to her. "What do you mean, the rest?" Jasmine looked toward Kirk again. "He didn't just tell me he loved both of us. He made promises. He told me he wanted to fix what he called the three of us. He said maybe we could all move forward together. That's why I went." The crowd erupted in noise. Half the audience groaned in disbelief. The other half shouted questions. Kirk's eyes widened, panic flashing across his face. "No, that's not Jasmine, you're twisting everything." "Am I?" she asked, stepping closer to him now. "You said you wanted a family without secrets. You said I'd always be a part of your story. Those were your words, Kirk. Your words." He backed up slightly, shaking his head. "I meant closure. I meant I didn't want any bad blood." "You wanted control," she said firmly. "You wanted both of us to forgive you without actually owning what you did." The audience applauded, a strange mixture of approval and disbelief, the energy vibrating through the room. The host leaned forward. "Jasmine, can you tell us what happened after that conversation?" After those words were said, Jasmine's eyes dropped to the floor. "We argued. 4 hours. I cried." He walked out. "And when I woke up the next morning, those pictures were everywhere. I don't even know who took them. All I know is that by the time I checked my phone, my life was trending again, and not in a good way." The host nodded slowly. "So you're saying you didn't leak them?" "No," Jasmine said flatly, "but I know who did." Kirk's face went still. "Don't do this," he said quietly. Jasmine lifted her head, locking eyes with him. "It was you." The crowd screamed. Cameras flashed. Even the host's jaw dropped. "That's a lie," Kirk shouted, his voice breaking. "Why would I leak something that made me look bad?" "Because you wanted to control the narrative," Jasmine said, voice trembling with emotion. "You wanted to make it look like I was chasing you again, like I couldn't let go. And you thought if people blamed me, you'd come out clean." The studio audience erupted into gasps and murmurs. The host tried to regain control, but it was too late. The story had taken on a life of its own. Kirk turned toward the cameras, his voice desperate. "That's not true. I would never do that to my family." "You already did," Jasmine said quietly. The crowd fell silent again. Kirk's breathing was heavy, ragged. The host looked between them helplessly. This is a lot," she said softly. "Jasmine, do you have proof?" Jasmine hesitated, then reached for her purse on the floor beside her chair. The audience held their breath. She pulled out her phone, unlocked it, and handed it to the host. "Check the timestamp on that message," she said. 2 hours before the photos leaked, Kirk texted me. Maybe it's time people see the truth." The host scrolled through the screen, her eyes widening. She looked up slowly, her expression stunned. "This is real." "Check the number," Jasmine said. "That's him." The cameras zoomed in on Kirk's face. He looked defeated, small, caught between fury and shame. "You're twisting it," he whispered. "You don't know what that message meant." "It meant exposure," Jasmine replied. "You were tired of hiding, but you didn't have the courage to tell her yourself." The audience broke into a wave of whispers and words unbelievable. Then, suddenly, a commotion stirred at the back of the set. The curtain shifted. Rasheeda was walking back in, her face pale but steady, her microphone back in place. The crowd went wild. She didn't look at the audience, or the cameras. She looked only at Kirk. "Is it true?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer. His lips trembled, his shoulders sagged. "You sent that message?" she asked again. "You sent it knowing what it would do." Still nothing. "Say it," she whispered. "Say it." Kirk finally looked up. "I didn't mean for it to blow up like that." The audience gasped again. Jasmine closed her eyes. The host tried to step in, but Rasheeda's voice cut through the noise. "You didn't mean for it to blow up, but you still lit the match," she said. "You ruined everything we rebuilt." "Everything." Her voice cracked on the last word. Jasmine looked at her, guilt heavy in her eyes. "I swear, I didn't know." "I thought you thought he was telling you the truth," Rasheeda said. "Welcome to my world." The crowd's reaction was a mix of shock and sympathy, a wave of noise that echoed off the studio walls. Kirk took a step forward, but Rasheeda stepped back. "Don't," she said. "Don't come near me." He froze. She turned to Jasmine, her voice quieter now. "You were right about one thing. He doesn't know who he is without the drama. And maybe neither of us did either." Jasmine looked down. "I just wanted peace," she said again, almost to herself. "Peace doesn't come from people like him," Rasheeda said, her tone soft but final. "It comes from walking away." The host's eyes darted between them, sensing the weight of the moment. So what happens now? She asked. Rasheeda didn't answer. She simply looked at Kirk one last time, eyes glistening, and said, "You made your choice. Now live with it." Then she turned and walked off again. Slower this time, but stronger. Jasmine stood motionless, watching her go. Kirk sank back into his chair, his face buried in his hands. The audience was silent, stunned. The host leaned forward and whispered into her microphone, "We'll be right back." But Jasmine's voice broke through the silence before they could cut to commercial. "No," she said softly, "we're not done yet." And the cameras stayed rolling as she lifted her head, eyes fierce again, ready to expose the rest of the truth no one saw coming. The cameras zoomed in on Jasmine's face, her eyes shining under the studio lights. The audience was still catching its breath from Rasheeda's exit, but Jasmine's steady voice pulled everyone back in. "You all think this story ends with a leak," she said, "but that was just the beginning." That night, after those pictures went viral, Kirk called me. He wasn't angry. He wasn't shocked. He was calm, too calm. She paused, looking straight into the lens. "That's when I knew he planned it." The audience gasped, a wave of murmurs filling the room. The host shifted in her seat, trying to maintain composure. "You're saying Kirk staged everything? Even the leak?" "Yes," Jasmine said. "He wanted the world to think I was still chasing him, that he was some poor husband stuck between two women who couldn't let him go. But the truth is, he never let either of us go." Kirk looked up sharply, his voice trembling. "That's not true. Jasmine, you're twisting everything." She laughed bitterly. "You keep saying that, but every time someone shows proof, you say the same thing. You never lie, you just didn't mean it that way." The audience clapped, some even shouting agreement. Kirk's jaw tightened. "You think I wanted this? To have my name dragged through the mud again? To see my wife walk out on national television? You wanted attention," Jasmine said quietly. "You can't live without it. You love being the man everyone's talking about. Whether it's praise or scandal, it doesn't matter as long as they're saying your name." The host's voice broke through the rising noise. "Jasmine, you mentioned that night Kirk called you. Can you tell us what he said?" Jasmine nodded slowly. "He said, 'This might hurt now, but it'll fix everything later.' I asked him what he meant, and he said, 'You'll see.' Then he hung up. By morning, the photos were everywhere, and he was silent. No texts, no calls, nothing." "That's not how it happened," Kirk said quickly. "You left out what you said to me before that." "What did she say?" the host asked. "She said she was tired of hiding too," Kirk replied. "She said maybe the world should know the truth." "Don't twist it," Jasmine said. "I was talking about telling the truth to her, not to the world. But you took that as your green light to start another scandal." The room buzzed with whispers. The host glanced toward the producers behind the cameras, but no one signaled to cut. The director's voice came faintly through her earpiece. "Keep rolling, Kirk," the host said carefully. "Why didn't you tell Rasheeda before the trip if this was really about closure?" He rubbed his hands together, his voice quiet. "Because she wouldn't have understood." The audience reacted instantly. Boos and gasps filled the room. Jasmine stared at him in disbelief. "She wouldn't have understood," she repeated. "She's your wife, Kirk, the only person you owed honesty to." "It wasn't that simple," he said. "Every time I tried to explain, it turned into a fight. So you lied instead," Jasmine said flatly. "I tried to protect her," he snapped. "By humiliating her," she shouted. "By letting the whole world see you with me again." The audience clapped again, louder this time. Kirk leaned back in his chair, his face pale. The host leaned forward. "Jasmine, after those photos came out, how did Rasheeda respond? Did she contact you?" Jasmine nodded. "She texted me once. Just one message. It said, 'You really don't stop.' And I didn't even reply. What could I say? She didn't deserve that pain, and I couldn't explain what I didn't understand myself." The audience went quiet, listening. Jasmine's voice softened. "I wasn't trying to destroy her. I was trying to close a chapter. But Kirk, he always finds a way to keep it open." Kirk stood up suddenly. "That's not fair," he said, his voice shaking. "You act like I wanted all this. I didn't. I made mistakes. Yes, but so did you. You knew what we were when you got involved." "Don't you dare," Jasmine said through gritted teeth. "Don't put that on me. You were married. I was young and stupid, and you were supposed to be the grown one." The host raised a hand. "Let's keep this respectful." But Jasmine wasn't done. "You told me everything I wanted to hear. You told me you were separated. You told me you were fixing things. And every time she forgave you, you came back to me pretending you were broken. I was your emotional crutch, Kirk. You used me. The audience gasped again. Kirk's eyes filled with tears. He tried to hide. I loved you, he whispered. No, Jasmine said, shaking her head. You loved the power. You loved that two women cared enough to fight over you. The crowd erupted in noise, applause mixed with shocked murmurs. The host tried to regain control, but the story had taken over the stage. Kirk sat back down, his hands trembling. After a long silence, Jasmine continued, her tone quieter now. After the pictures leaked, I disappeared. I didn't talk to anyone for days. I stayed in a hotel room with the curtains closed, watching the internet tear me apart again. And guess who called me then? The host frowned. Who? Rasheeda, Jasmine said softly. She didn't yell. She didn't curse. She just said, he'll never change. Jasmine, walk away while you still can. And then she hung up. The audience fell silent again. The host's voice trembled slightly as she asked, and did you listen? I wanted to, Jasmine said, but I couldn't because part of me still believed him. I thought maybe this time was different. Kirk whispered, it was different. She looked at him, her eyes filled with something between pity and anger. Different how? Because you got caught again. Because you finally saw what it looked like when the world stopped believing your lies. He didn't answer. The host glanced between them, sensing another storm building. So what happened after the photos leaked? What was the breaking point? Jasmine's expression hardened. He told me to keep quiet. He said if I just stayed silent, people would move on, but I couldn't. Not again. So that's why you're here tonight? The host asked. Yes, Jasmine said, because I'm done carrying the blame for what he did. I'm done being the villain in his story. The crowd erupted in applause. Even the host looked visibly moved. But before she could speak again, Kirk leaned forward, his voice low and raw. You're not innocent either. You kept coming back to. Jasmine looked at him for a long time, then nodded slowly. You're right, I did. Because I thought maybe one day you'd finally choose to be a better man, but you never did. The audience was silent again. The tension felt almost sacred, like everyone was afraid to breathe. Finally, the host spoke softly. Kirk, if you could say one thing to Rasheeda right now, what would it be? Kirk hesitated. The cameras zoomed in. I'd tell her I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. I'd tell her I lost sight of who I was trying to be. And I'd tell her, I still love her. The audience murmured, some clapping softly, others groaning. Jasmine looked down, her expression unreadable. And what about Jasmine? The host asked. What would you say to her? He turned to her slowly. I'd say, thank you. Kirk, if you could say one thing to Rasheeda right now, what would it be? Kirk hesitated. The cameras zoomed in. I'd tell her I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. I'd tell her I lost sight of who I was trying to be. And I'd tell her, I still love her. The audience murmured, some clapping softly, others groaning. Jasmine looked down, her expression unreadable. And what about Jasmine? The host asked. What would you say to her? He turned to her slowly. I'd say thank you for forcing me to face myself, even if it destroyed everything. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. Two people bound by a past neither of them could escape. The host sat back, exhaling deeply. This, she said, is not the story anyone expected tonight. Jasmine smiled faintly, her voice tired but clear. That's because the truth never fits the headline. The audience erupted into applause again, and for a fleeting moment, even Kirk managed a sad smile. But then the lights dimmed slightly, the cameras zoomed in once more, and Jasmine said, but don't think it ends here. There's something else you all need to know. The host blinked. What do you mean? Jasmine looked straight into the lens, her voice steady. This wasn't the first trip, it was the second. The audience screamed, voices rising in shock and disbelief as the screen faded slowly to black. And the promise of more secrets hung thick in the air. The studio lights flickered back onto chaos. The audience was shouting. The host's earpiece buzzed with a dozen voices. And Jasmine sat perfectly still, her calm terrifying. Kirk's head was down, his hands gripping his knees as if holding himself in place. The host's voice wavered as she asked, the second trip. Jasmine, are you saying there was another one before this? Yes, Jasmine said simply. A year ago, off camera, no pictures, no leaks, no one knew. That was supposed to be the end. But it never ended. The audience gasped. Kirk lifted his head, his voice rough. You promised you wouldn't bring that up. I promised when you said you were going to tell her yourself, Jasmine said. But you never did. The host leaned forward, barely breathing. What happened on that first trip? Jasmine's voice softened. He told me he wanted to make things right. That he couldn't move on until he apologized to me face to face. I believed him. I flew out there thinking it was closure. But the second night, he kissed me. And when I pulled away, he said, "It doesn't have to be over." The audience gasped again. Louder this time. Kirk slammed his hand on his thigh. "That's not how it happened. We were talking about forgiveness, and things got emotional." Jasmine's eyes narrowed. "You kissed me, Kirk. You crossed that line again. And I thought, maybe it meant something. Maybe you really were ready to change. But then you went home, posted pictures with Rasheeda, and acted like nothing happened." The host looked shaken. "So you're saying Kirk and you rekindled things before the vacation photos?" "No," Jasmine said firmly. "We never got that far. But he wanted to. He just didn't want anyone to know. And when I refused to keep being his secret, he ghosted me. And then, months later, he showed up again with that same line. This time it's for closure." The audience erupted again. Kirk stood up. "You're painting me as a monster, Jasmine." She rose too, her voice sharp. "You made yourself one." The crowd roared. The host tried to calm them, but no one listened. The air was electric, thick with tension and disbelief. Kirk rubbed his forehead, muttering, "You don't understand what it's like, having the world judge you every day." "We all get judged," Jasmine said. "The difference is, some of us deserve it." The host's voice broke through the noise. "Kirk, you need to explain this. Were there 2 trips?" Kirk hesitated. The silence stretched. The camera zoomed in. "Yes," he said finally. "But the first one wasn't what she's making it sound like. It was about closure. I wanted to make peace." "You keep using that word," Jasmine said quietly. "Peace doesn't mean doing the same thing over and over and pretending it's new." The audience applauded. Kirk's face reddened. "You're twisting everything to make me look bad." "You don't need help with that," Jasmine said. "You've been doing it for years." The host took a breath, her tone steady but tense. "So Jasmine, why didn't you speak up after the first trip?" "Because I was ashamed," Jasmine said. "I didn't want to be dragged again. I didn't want people saying I was obsessed or desperate. So I stayed quiet. I let him go back home and play family man, and I stayed silent because I thought maybe silence would finally give me peace." The studio was quiet now, everyone listening. Jasmine continued, her words trembling but strong. "But then when I saw him on that beach again, smiling like the first time meant nothing, I realized I wasn't the only one stuck. He was too, stuck between his guilt and his ego, and he wanted both worlds to forgive him without doing the work." Kirk shook his head. "You don't understand. I was trying to hold everything together." "By lying?" she asked. "By surviving," he said softly. "I didn't know who I was without all this." The host leaned forward. "And who are you now, Kirk?" He didn't answer. His eyes were glassy, his voice low. "I don't know anymore." The crowd murmured, a strange mix of sympathy and disbelief. Jasmine crossed her arms. "That's the only honest thing you've said tonight." The host turned to Jasmine. "And how do you feel now that all of this is out?" She hesitated, relieved, angry, sad, all of it, but mostly, free. The audience clapped. Kirk looked down again, silent. "You say you're free," the host said, "but don't you think reliving this keeps you tied to it?" "It's not reliving," Jasmine said quietly. "It's reclaiming. Every time someone tells my story for me, it gets twisted. Tonight, I wanted to tell it myself. The truth, not the headlines." The crowd applauded again, some standing. Kirk rubbed his eyes. "So what happens next?" the host asked. "I move on," Jasmine said. "For real this time. No more half-truths. No more second chances. I'm done being his lesson." Kirk looked up, voice breaking. "I never wanted to hurt you." "You didn't have to want to," Jasmine said softly. "You just did." The host turned to Kirk again. "What about Rasheeda? Have you spoken to her since she left the stage?" He shook his head. "No, but I will." "You think she'll answer?" Jasmine asked. He didn't respond. "She won't," Jasmine said, "because for the first time, she saw what we've all been living with. The truth doesn't always set you free, it just shows you who you've been chained to." The audience murmured, visibly shaken. Kirk's shoulders slumped. "I wish I could take it all back," he said quietly. "You can't," Jasmine said. "You can only stop repeating it." The host leaned forward again. "Jasmine, earlier you said this story isn't over. What did you mean by that?" Jasmine exhaled, her voice dropping low. "Because there's one more thing nobody knows. And it changes everything." The audience gasped again. The host's eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" Jasmine looked at Kirk. "I wasn't the only one on that trip." The crowd screamed. Kirk froze. The host's mouth fell open. "What do you mean? Who else was there?" Jasmine hesitated, her voice trembling. "Someone from his team. Someone close. And they saw everything." "Who?" the host asked. Jasmine looked into the camera, eyes hard. "His assistant." Kirk's face went white. Don't drag her into this, he said quickly. Why not? Jasmine said. She was there. She knows the truth. And I bet she's tired of covering for you too. The audience erupted into chaos again. Producers were whispering urgently. The host's hand shook slightly as she held her microphone. Are you saying his assistant was involved? Not with me, Jasmine said. But she saw what happened. She took some of those pictures. The crowd gasped. Kirk turned to the cameras. Stop this. She's lying. Then call her, Jasmine said. Right now. Call her and tell her to deny it. Kirk froze, his phone heavy in his pocket. The studio was silent. All eyes on him. He didn't move. The host's voice trembled. Kirk, are you going to call her? His silence was the answer. Jasmine nodded slowly. Thought so? The crowd exploded with noise, half shouting, half cheering. Kirk covered his face with his hands. The host leaned back, stunned. Jasmine sat down again, calm returning to her voice. I didn't want to do this here, she said, but he left me no choice. People keep asking why I won't move on. This is why. Because every time I try to heal, another truth comes out. And every time, it's worse than the last. The host spoke quietly now. Jasmine, do you think you'll ever forgive him? Forgive, yes, Jasmine said. Forget, never. Because forgetting means pretending it didn't happen. And I've done enough pretending for a lifetime. Kirk lifted his head. So that's it, you just ruin me and walk away. No, Jasmine said softly, you ruined yourself. I just stopped hiding it. The audience stood, clapping, shouting, some crying. The host's voice trembled as she said, This is unbelievable. But Jasmine's expression didn't change. She looked into the camera one last time and said, Believe it, because it's all real. And as the lights dimmed again, Kirk sat frozen in the shadow of his own silence. And Jasmine closed her eyes, whispering to herself, It's finally over. But even she knew it wasn't. It wasn't. The words slipped out of Jasmine's mouth like a secret she didn't mean to share, and the moment they did, the air in the studio changed. The audience leaned forward again, restless, hungry. The host lifted her cue cards, then lowered them, as if even she knew paper couldn't control what was about to happen. Kirk looked up, red-eyed and hollow, a man staring down the consequences he used to outrun. What do you mean it wasn't? The host asked carefully, her voice barely more than a breath. Jasmine blinked, as though surprised she'd spoken. It wasn't over, she said. Not that night. Not the next morning. Not when the pictures dropped. Not even when I left the island. She swallowed hard, voice steadying. Because the truth always follows you home. Kirk let out a ragged sigh. Please, he said, his tone almost pleading. Don't do this on TV. You did this on TV, Jasmine answered. You always do. A rumble of agreement rolled through the audience. The host glanced toward the side curtain, listening to the director in her ear, then nodded once. We're staying here, she said, looking back at the camera. No commercial, no break. We're going to hear this through. Kirk rubbed his chest like he had a stitch in his heart. What more is there to say? Everything, Jasmine replied, because this isn't just a story about a trip. It's a story about choices. And you made yours long before we got on that plane. The host folded her hands. Start at the beginning of the end, she said gently. Jasmine drew a breath. When those pictures leaked, I checked out of the hotel and booked the first flight home. I put my phone on airplane mode because the notifications were a storm. I couldn't breathe for the noise. She looked down for a second, then back up. When I landed, I turned my phone back on. I had 3 missed calls from an unknown number. 3 messages from his assistant. The audience stirred. Kirk's shoulders tensed. What did she say? The host asked. She said, Call me, urgent, Jasmine answered. And then she said, he promised me he'd tell her before anything hit the blogs. And then she said, I'm tired of covering for him. Jasmine paused. She wasn't attacking me. She was warning me. Kirk shook his head. She didn't mean it like that. Then say what she meant. Jasmine shot back. He faltered, lips pressing together. He didn't speak. I called her, Jasmine continued. She was crying. She told me she was the one who booked the first trip. She told me she booked the second one too. She said he told her it was professional reconciliation. She believed him until she didn't. She believed him until she saw him on that beach saying things he promised never to say again. I was trying to apologize, Kirk muttered, but it didn't sound convincing, even to him. The host turned, quiet but firm. Kirk, why involve your assistant in something this personal? Because I was drowning, he replied, looking helplessly at the floor. And I asked the wrong person for a life raft. You didn't ask for a life raft, Jasmine said softly. You asked for a cover story. The audience burst into a low hum. Phones lifted, thumbs flew, tweets formed like storm clouds. And then, Jasmine went on. She sent me a file. It was an audio memo. She said she recorded it by accident when her phone was in her bag on the deck. I didn't believe her at first, but I listened. Kirk's head snapped up. No, he said, fear slicing through the word. Don't play that. The host blinked. You have it with you. Jasmine nodded, reaching for her purse again. I wasn't going to play it, she said. I thought I'd keep it for myself. Not to hurt anyone, just to remind me I wasn't crazy. She pulled out her phone and held it, the lock screen glowing like a confession. But I'm not crazy. I'm not a liar. I'm not the villain you wrote for me. The studio held its breath. The host's eyes flicked to a producer near camera 2. The producer made a sharp slicing motion. Do not air. The host cleared her throat. We can't broadcast private recordings without clearance, she said, but you can summarize it. I don't need to, Jasmine replied, voice steady. I remember every word. What did it say? The host asked. It said, Jasmine began, you laughing. She nodded toward Kirk. Laughing like the sun made promises. You said, I wish they'd stop making me pick. You said, I love them both in different ways. You said, if they could just forgive me at the same time, we'd finally be good. And then you said, maybe the pictures will force it. The audience erupted, a wave of shock rolling off the risers. Someone shouted, he said what? Another voice cursed under their breath. Hands covered mouths. Eyes widened. The sound was a living thing. Kirk's face strained. I was drunk, he said weakly. I didn't mean it like that. Jasmine nodded once, a sad kind of acceptance in the gesture. You never mean it like that. Until you do. The host leaned forward, her tone low. Kirk, if that is accurate, then you admit you knew the pictures could go public. He squeezed his eyes shut. I knew it was a risk, he whispered. I didn't think it would explode like this. It always explodes, Jasmine said. You just don't stay long enough to see the fire. Silence settled. Then, fractured with a voice from the audience, a woman in the third row waving her hand. The host nodded at her. Say it, she urged. What about the kids? The woman asked, voice shaking. What about family? The family was left divided. How do you fix that? The question landed hard. Jasmine's jaw tightened. Kirk's eyes glassed over again. I don't get to fix it, Jasmine said softly. I get to live with it. So do they. The host straightened. Have either of you spoken to family since this aired? I talked to my mom, Jasmine said. She told me to take a breath before I spoke, then to speak anyway. She said staying quiet is how I lost myself the first time. Kirk swallowed. I got a message from my son, he said. It said, do better. The audience fell still. The host nodded slowly, letting that sink in. What did you reply? Kirk's voice broke. I said, I will. Words are cheap, Jasmine murmured. But I hope you mean it. A sudden stir rippled across the front of the stage. The curtain shifted. A producer hurried toward the host, whispering urgently, eyes wide. The host listened, then blinked in surprise. She looked straight ahead and said, We've just received word that the assistant is watching live. The room detonated into noise. Cameras panned, the jib swooped, the red tally lights glowed like alarms. Jasmine's mouth fell open slightly. Kirk froze. She's texted our control room, the host continued carefully, and says she is willing to speak. We're verifying identity now. Kirk shot to his feet. No, absolutely not. Sit down, Jasmine said flatly. You don't get to silence women anymore. He stared at her, rage and fear twisting together. After a moment, he sank back into the chair, chest rising and falling. The host pressed a finger to her earpiece, then nodded. We've confirmed her identity. She lifted her face to the camera. We're going to protect her privacy. We'll call her A. Are you on the line? A voice crackled through the speakers. Small but steady. I'm here. Gasps. Whispers. The audience's collective heartbeat sped up. Jasmine closed her eyes for a second, then opened them, bracing. A, the host said gently. Thank you for calling. We know this isn't easy. It's not, I replied, voice trembling. But watching this, I couldn't stay quiet. Kirk shook his head, whispering, please don't. A, the host continued. Did you book the trips? Yes, the assistant said. Both of them. Did you believe they were for closure? The first one, A said. I believed he wanted to apologize and move on. He cried in the office when he asked me to help. He said he couldn't sleep. I was new. I trusted him. A paused. The second one. I knew better. I warned him not to go. I told him it would blow up. He said he needed it too. The audience cried out. The host gripped the arm of her chair. Jasmine breathed out, shaky but relieved. Kirk looked like someone had cut the last wire holding him together. The host asked softly, did you leak the photos? No, the assistant said immediately. I would never. I was there. I did take some pictures for lighting tests and schedule notes because that's part of my job, but I didn't send them to anyone. I kept them on my phone. I even deleted them when I saw what was happening. But it was too late. Someone else had them. How? The host asked. His cloud, A said. He syncs everything. Sometimes things back up even when you don't mean to. I told him to lock his settings, but the assistant trailed off. He didn't listen. Kirk pressed his fingers to his temples. I didn't know, he whispered. You didn't want to know, Jasmine said. The host asked carefully, did you hear the conversation Jasmine mentioned? About loving them both and forcing forgiveness. A's breath hitched. Yes, she said. Not all of it, but enough. I was bringing drinks back to the deck. I heard him say, I'm tired of being the bad guy for trying to fix it. I heard him say, if they see we're still cool, maybe they'll stop hating me. I heard Jasmine tell him, this isn't fixing, this is hiding. And then I left because I knew I wasn't supposed to be there. Thank you, Jasmine said softly, into the air, hoping the assistant could feel it through the wire. The host swallowed. We won't keep you longer. Do you want to say anything to anyone before you go? A hesitated. To Jasmine, she said. I'm sorry, I should have said something. Been shouting at your screen, choosing sides, or whispering no way under your breath. We want to hear from you. What do you think really happened on that beach? Who do you believe? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Because this conversation doesn't end here. Tell us what moment hit you hardest. What truth felt familiar? What part of this story made you stop and think? And if you've been here for the journey from the first headline to this final confession, just scroll past. Hit that like button to show you've been watching. Subscribe so you never miss the next chapter. And turn on notifications so when the next wave of truth crashes, you'll be here to witness it first. You've seen the faces, heard the tears, felt the tension. Now it's time to add your voice. Was Jasmine brave or reckless? Was Kirk broken or manipulative? Was Rasheeda's calm forgiveness strength or exhaustion? Your opinion matters because this story lives on in the space between every comment, every reaction, every replay. So stay tuned, because if tonight proved anything, it's that the truth has a way of finding the spotlight, no matter how hard people try to dim it. Until the next story breaks, keep your eyes open, your heart steady. And remember, on this stage, nothing stays buried forever. Hit like, subscribe, and tell us, whose truth do you believe? The lights hit like a sunrise, bright, merciless, and too close for comfort. The studio was cold, but no one could feel it. Every seat in the front row was filled. Producers whispered behind cameras, makeup artists hid, just out of sight. And the audience sat breathless, waiting for the chaos they knew was coming. The banner hanging above the stage read, Unfiltered Truth, Jasmine, Kirk, Rasheeda. It looked like an interview, but it felt like a trial. The host, a smooth-voiced journalist named Dana Cole, adjusted her earpiece as she faced the camera. Tonight, she began, her tone low and urgent. One of Atlanta's most talked-about women breaks her silence. Jasmine Cross speaks for the first time since the release of those shocking vacation photos with Kirk Frost, and yes, Rasheeda is here, sitting, right there. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. The lights shifted, the camera panned, and three figures appeared. Kirk, shoulders stiff. Rasheeda, flawless but clearly tense. And Jasmine, glowing in a cream jumpsuit that seemed too bold for the occasion. Dana continued, Now, before we get into it, we all saw the pictures. Kirk and Jasmine, on a yacht in Turks and Caicos. Smiles, drinks, waves, matching swimwear. Fans called it disrespectful. Some called it a betrayal. But Jasmine says we don't know the half of it. The music faded, and the first silence of the night fell. You could almost hear hearts beating through the microphones. Dana turned to Jasmine. So, Jasmine, why now? Why speak today? After everything? Jasmine glanced at the audience, then at Rasheeda, who refused to look her way. Because, she said softly, I'm tired of people speaking for me. I'm tired of everyone painting me like I'm some villain in their love story. A few people in the audience murmured. Someone in the front whispered, "Oh, she bold." Rasheeda finally looked up, her eyes steady but cold. "You put yourself in that story." The crowd gasped again. Dana raised her hand. "Ladies, we're gonna get to all of that, I promise. But Jasmine, let's start with that trip. What really happened in Turks and Caicos?" Jasmine leaned forward. "It wasn't a vacation. That's what everyone got wrong. Kirk called me because he wanted closure. He said he needed to talk. Away from the noise. Away from Atlanta. He told me Rasheeda knew." Kirk's head snapped toward her. "That's not what I said." "Oh, really?" Jasmine shot back. "So I just imagined you telling me she was fine with it. That it was strictly business. You think I just made that up?" The studio went dead quiet. Dana's eyes darted between them like a referee. "Business," Rasheeda repeated, her voice sharp as glass. "Ain't no business on a yacht with champagne and no shirts." The crowd erupted in nervous laughter and gasps. Jasmine didn't flinch. "You can believe what you want, but he told me y'all were done. He said it wasn't working anymore." Rasheeda gave a short, bitter laugh. "You've been saying that for years. You said it when you had his baby. You said it when you showed up on set last time. You always got a story ready." Jasmine's tone changed. "Because he keeps calling me back." The room froze. Kirk's eyes widened. Rasheeda's hands tightened in her lap. Dana jumped in, trying to keep control. "Jasmine, are you saying that Kirk has been in contact with you recently?" Jasmine looked directly into the camera. "Yes. And he wasn't calling to talk about the weather." The audience screamed. The producers in the booth exchanged frantic signals. One mouthed, "Keep rolling. Don't cut." Rasheeda stood up, her mic crackling. "You're lying." "Am I?" Jasmine snapped. "You think you know everything, but you don't know half of what that man's been saying behind closed doors." "Sit down." Kirk hissed through clenched teeth, grabbing Rasheeda's arm. "We're not doing this here." Rasheeda shook him off. "No, you did this here." Dana's voice cut through the noise. "Everyone, let's take a breath. This is a safe space." "Okay, Jasmine, you're saying Kirk reached out to you after all the public drama. Why?" Jasmine paused. Her voice softened, breaking just slightly. "He said he was lonely. He said he didn't feel seen. And when a man says that, it does something to you, especially when it's someone you never really got closure with." The crowd murmured again. A woman in the back shook her head, whispering, "That's messy." Kirk stared down at his shoes. "That's not how it happened," he said, barely above a whisper. Rasheeda turned to him. "Then how did it happen, Kirk?" "Because I'm sitting here, looking at pictures of you and her on a beach, like y'all on honeymoon number 2. The lights seemed to dim. Kirk ran a hand over his face. "I told you I was going there for work." "She showed up." Jasmine's jaw dropped. "You lying on national television. You invited me." "Lies," Kirk barked. "You showed up knowing I was there, hoping people would see." Dana's voice trembled with excitement. "So, are you saying Jasmine planned to get caught?" Rasheeda folded her arms again. "She always plans something." Jasmine's voice cracked. "You think I want to be dragged by strangers every week? You think I like waking up to my name trending with your husbands? I didn't plan this. I just showed up for the truth." Kirk groaned. "You showed up for clout." Jasmine slammed a hand on the table. "Then why'd you answer the phone every time I called?" Gasps filled the air again. Dana's hand covered her mouth. Rasheeda blinked slowly, almost in disbelief. "Wow," she said, "so that's what we're doing." The tension grew thick enough to taste. Behind the cameras, someone whispered, "This is gold." Dana leaned forward. "Jasmine, some people online say you're trying to destroy a family. What do you say to that?" Jasmine looked directly at the host, her eyes glistening. "I didn't destroy anything. I just told the truth. If the truth ruins a family, maybe that family wasn't real to begin with." The audience gasped again. Rasheeda shook her head, laughing without humor. "Girl, you're delusional. You've been chasing this man for years. You got your truth, now live with it." For a moment, the two women locked eyes, and the air seemed to freeze between them. Dana tried to keep her composure. "Rasheeda, what's going through your mind right now?" Rasheeda turned to the camera. "I'm sitting here next to a woman who tried to ruin my marriage, and she's acting like she's the victim. That's what's going through my mind." Jasmine snapped back. "You keep saying I ruined it, but your man did that himself. Don't blame me because he can't stop lying." Kirk slammed his hand on the table. "Enough, both of y'all." The sound echoed through the set. The crowd fell silent. Dana took a careful breath. "Kirk, this is your chance to clear the air. What really happened on that trip?" Kirk looked exhausted, his voice breaking under the pressure. "I made a mistake. I shouldn't have gone. I told her it was about business, but maybe I just wanted to see if we could end things right." Rasheeda's eyes filled with tears. End things. You were supposed to be ending the past, not revisiting it. Jasmine whispered, you can't end what never ended. A single tear slid down Rasheeda's cheek. She wiped it quickly, then stood again. You're not gonna sit here and embarrass me like this. Kirk reached for her. Rasheeda, don't walk away. She stepped back. Watch me. The crowd gasped again. Dana's headset buzzed with producers shouting directions. Follow her. Camera 3. Stay wide. Rasheeda turned at the door. You know what hurts? I believed we were past all this. I forgave him. I built with him. And you, she pointed at Jasmine, you keep showing up every time we start to heal. Jasmine's voice rose, trembling, because he keeps calling me. He's the one who won't let me go. Kirk shouted, that's a lie. The audience shouted in disbelief. The studio felt like it was about to burst. Dana stood up, trying to calm the storm. Everyone, we need to take a break. But no one moved. The camera stayed rolling, and the feed went live across social media. Within minutes, the hashtags were trending. Hashtag Jasmine speaks. Hashtag RASHEEDA. Walks out. Hashtag Kirk exposed. Fans flooded comment sections. She really said that with Rasheeda right there. Kirk is sweating bullets. This is worse than the reunion episode. Back in the studio, Rasheeda paused by the exit door, her voice low but sharp. You can't fix something you keep breaking. Kirk,